Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Today, we're jumping straight into what I like to call a botanical true crime story. We're going to track down a silent killer that's probably lurking right beneath your plant's leaves as we speak. I mean, if you've ever watched a beloved houseplant or a garden shrub just slowly wither away despite your absolute best efforts, you know exactly how frustrating it is. But today, we're going to put on our detective hats and really look at the evidence. Okay, so let's dive right into this bizarre paradox. Have you ever aggressively watered a wilting plant only to watch it die even faster? It totally defies our basic logic, right? We see a drooping leaf, our brain instantly screams water, and we grab the watering can. But surprisingly often, we are actually speeding up the plant's demise by doing that. Just look at this poor thing. A dramatically wilting plant like this is our perfect crime scene. It looks incredibly thirsty, right? The leaves have lost all their rigidity, they're drooping, and it honestly appears completely drought-stressed. But the secret to its demise is actually hidden right there under the wet soil. It is a classic case of misdirection. All right, Section 1, biotic versus abiotic suspects. To solve this mystery, we first need to divide our perpetrators into two distinct lineups. Whenever a plant is in distress, the cause pretty much always falls into one of these two categories. First, you have biotic factors. These are the living threats, your fungi, bacteria, viruses, and insects. But before we go assuming some infectious contagion is to blame, we absolutely must rule out the abiotic environmental factors. These are the non-living stressors. This includes things like poor drainage causing standing water over the rooting zone, severely compacted soil, or even physical damage from heavy machinery. So, the absolutely crucial point here is that context is everything. As this quote perfectly highlights, an accurate diagnosis has to look at the surrounding environment. For example, a tree might look horribly wilted, which naturally prompts you to water it. But if you stop and investigate the context, you might discover it's sitting right next to a construction site and recently had a huge portion of its root system sliced off. In that case, the lack of water isn't the issue at all. The lack of roots is. Moving on to Section 2. The threat of poor drainage. Let's zero in on our prime suspect, poor drainage. The exact mechanism of death here is something called hypoxia. We so often forget that roots actually need to breathe. They literally require oxygen to perform cellular respiration, almost like human lungs. When your soil is overly saturated and just won't drain, the air pores in that soil fill completely with water. The roots are effectively suffocated and they drown. And here is the truly tragic irony of poor drainage. Without that oxygen, the roots completely shut down. They can no longer take up water or nutrients. This is exactly why overwatering and poor drainage look identical to severe drought stress. It's crazy, but the plant is sitting in a literal puddle of water, yet it's dying of thirst because its compromised vascular system can't pull that moisture upward. Now, a tragic physical symptom of this structural failure is water soaking. You can clearly see it here. A wet, dark, sunken, translucent lesion right on the leaf. When a plant is severely stressed by poor drainage, opportunistic bacteria and fungi often move in for the kill. They cause these mushy, rotting spots that signal the plant's internal defense systems have totally collapsed. Which brings us to Section 3, the disease triangle. You see, poor drainage rarely acts alone. It almost always has accomplices. For any serious infectious disease to take hold, it isn't just about a plant having a run of bad luck. You actually need three specific things to align perfectly: a vulnerable, susceptible host plant, an active, aggressive pathogen, and crucially, a favorable environment that supports that pathogen's growth. If you remove just one side of this triangle, the disease simply cannot fully develop. And this is exactly where our prime suspect fits in. Poor drainage acts as that favorable environment. Even if a nasty pathogen is present in the soil, it might just stay dormant. But the lack of drainage creates the perfect, soggy, low-oxygen staging ground for our microscopic villains to awaken and thrive. It completely tips the scale in their favor. Let's look at who takes advantage of this environment. Meet the opportunistic water molds, like Pythium and Phytophthora. These are fungal pathogens that literally have spores adapted to swim, yes, swim, and spread through water. They just wait for flooded, poorly draining soils with a pH above 6.0 to launch their attack, causing devastating root and stem rots. Often it starts as just a single wilted branch before taking down the entire plant. Section 4. Subterranean Diagnostics and Forensics. So how do we actually prove poor drainage is the culprit before it's too late? Well, it's time to get our hands dirty. You don't need any fancy lab equipment to check your soil structure. This simple step-by-step diagnostic instantly tells you if you have a compaction problem. Just grab a standard screwdriver from your toolbox and push it into the ground. If you meet heavy resistance and cannot easily penetrate the top 6 inches, your soil is way too dense. That compaction is actively restricting root expansion and suffocating the soil by blocking oxygen diffusion. Now, if you're dealing with a potted plant, you need to slide it out of its pot and do a visual inspection. Healthy roots should generally be really firm and light-colored, but if you see dark, mushy, brown roots where the outer layer just peels away under light pressure, leaving just a little stringy central vascular thread, you, my friend, have a confirmed case of root rot driven by poor drainage. You might even spot some secondary clues out in your vegetable garden. Because a suffocated root system can't transport nutrients, you might see what's called tip burn on your lettuce leaves, or that incredibly frustrating black blossom end rot on your tomatoes. People often think, oh, I need to add more fertilizer, but the soil already has nutrients. The restricted root system just physically can't deliver the essential calcium up to the plant during periods of rapid growth. All right, Section 5, Fixing Your Soil Structure. We've gathered all our evidence. Now let's apply the cure. To break that disease triangle we talked about, we have to eliminate that favorable wet environment. For indoor plants, this means using chunkier potting mixes that are heavily amended with perlite or organic matter. And absolutely ensure your containers have large exit holes for excess water. No holes, no plant. It's that simple. For outdoor gardening in heavy clay environments, building raised beds is often the most effective way to literally lift the root zone right out of the danger area. Oh, and let's clear up a massive myth right here and now. Never, ever add sand directly to heavy clay soil to improve drainage. I know, it seems totally logical, but mixing sand into fine clay actually creates a dense, concrete-like barrier that worsens compaction and pretty much guarantees root death. Always stick to organic matter and compost to loosen up heavy soils. Finally, we need to get off the calendar watering roller coaster. Plants don't drink on a weekly schedule. Use these physical checks instead. List your pots regularly to learn what they actually feel like when they are truly dry and light. Plunge a wooden bamboo skewer deep into the soil to check for hidden moisture at the core, like checking a cake in the oven. And as a general rule, just wait to water until at least the top third of the soil is totally dry. I really want you to remember this crucial takeaway from our explainer today. The absolute next time a plant looks sick, do not immediately reach for the chemical sprays or the watering can. Always check the soil environment before you blame a bug or fungus. Honestly, 9 times out of 10, correcting the drainage will solve the problem completely naturally. So now that you know the hidden signs of hypoxia, compaction, and root rot, you are fully equipped to break the disease triangle in your own garden. I challenge you to look beneath the surface, treat the soil, not just the symptoms. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and happy growing.